All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Content Zone. I hope you have taken a look here at the wall, because it literally gives you the history of media as we know it today in 7 or 8 easy panels, so that's pretty awesome. Obviously, content is lit, right? Because we're all here. Content is woke. That's why we're here. This is awesome. My name is Martin Albarda. I run a marketing consultancy called Flock Associates. We help marketers with change management. Before that, I worked at the Coca-Cola company and Anheuser-Busch InBev. We're here to talk about content. There's obviously more content in the world today produced on an hourly or minute-by-minute basis than we ever had before in the history of mankind. Some of it is great, some of it is terrible. Some terrible content gets to the top, some great content is completely looked over. And we're going to try and help you figure out today sort of how to do that better, how to really sort of learn from examples in content development. So how do you produce it? How do you distribute it? How do you measure it? How do you create it? Where can you find the resources? Who do you work with? All those types of questions we're trying to answer in all of the different sessions that we have here this afternoon. So I urge you, if you want to sort of learn all about content, stay here. Obviously, if there's pick and choose sessions, then you can also pick some of the other sessions in the other groups. But let me just tell you, this is the best room there is, so you just want to stay here. The purpose and objective of content is one thing that I want you to really think about as we go through this, right? So yes, there's a lot of content, and yes, you can create it, and yes, there's good ways and bad ways to do that, and yes, there's good ways and bad ways to distribute and all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing is, why are you doing it, right? That really, if there's one question that I want you to sort of keep asking yourself as you consider, is content part of my business? Is content part of my distribution strategy? Is content part of how I connect with consumers? Then what content and how do I do it? And all of that is really important. But the most important question that you have to ask yourself is, what is its purpose within the mix? And so that is something that I think you'll learn a lot about from some of the examples that we have. The examples this afternoon come mostly from Latin America, so that's exciting too. And we're going to hear from creators, distributors, producers, planners, advertisers, and suppliers. And so most of them will also take questions, and if there's no time for questions, then there'll be an opportunity to do that afterwards as well. All right, let's dive into the first session. You see the names already here behind me. Big questions, right? Branding versus performance campaigns, the impact of video and transferring dollars from TV to digital. Should I do that? How much should I transfer? Attribution and KPIs, how do I measure it? How do I know it's important? These are the topics that we're going to cover in the first session. We have somebody here from Tabula. Tabula says that they recognize the discovery problem, and basically they have developed tech that will help you figure it out. They call that tech a search engine in reverse. So that's kind of an interesting challenge that they've tackled. And then Road to Media is an agency that is focused specifically on achieving actual results out of activities that you deploy. So that is, they put all of their emphasis on generating results. So we're going to have a fireside chat discussion between Jennifer Becerra, who's LATAM account director for Tabula, and Rodrigo Vallejo, who's principal of R2 Media. All right, let's get it going. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
All right.
Hi there. Thank you. So again, Tabula, most lit and woke in the room, of course. My name is Jennifer Becerra. I work for Tabula. I'm an account director on the Latin American team, also specializing within the U.S. Hispanic market. I have with me our client and friend and partner, Rodrigo Vallejo from Road to Media.
Yep, thank you. How are you? Rodrigo, happy to be here with you guys. Road to Media, we're an agency based in Dallas and Bogota. We are pretty much a new agency. We have about a little bit less than 4 years. Been working with a lot of accounts. Thanks God, business has been good so far. And some of the accounts that we're going to talk about today, we have avocados from Mexico here in the U.S., Tabasco, the sauce, Bancopel in Mexico, the Water Conservation District in Texas, in Dallas, and Reunion Tower that we're going to talk about too, among some others.
Sure. And for the purposes of Tabula, Tabula is a discovery platform. I'm sure you guys have come across our widgets on the world's largest editorial sites, not only within, obviously, the US, but in Latin America. Tabula is fortunate enough to be able to straddle both sides of the advertiser and the publisher side of things. Working with Rodrigo and Road2 Media has been on the advertiser side. So just sort of bringing that content discovery, as was well mentioned before, sort of search in reverse. We impact about 1.3 billion users per month, which means that the average American comes into contact with a Tabula recommendation about 70 times per month. So it's an overwhelming number of recommendations, and sort of, as was also alluded to before, how do we make sense of everything that's out there in the internet sphere, how we actually make sense of those recommendations that are being brought to our attention from a user's perspective, but also to the point of Tabula, not interrupting the experience of the user from either a native perspective as well as a video perspective, and how to actually complement it with on our side, an algorithm that's making these recommendations possible to surface brands such as Rodrigo's in Tabasco, or whether it's avocados from Mexico, or whatever brand we're working with at the time. So sort of how to fold that into the mix. We do have an example for you guys, just so you can see. I'm sure most of you have heard of avocados from Mexico, or aguacates de Mexico. Most prominently featured probably in the past couple of years within a Super Bowl spot. And then we'll sort of break down sort of what that means as a brand, how to surface that to the correct users at the right time, and we can go from there. Cool?
So if you don't like the creative, it's good with me. We're not the creative agency. No, but I mean, what we had to do, I mean, the challenge for us as a media agency is, I mean, they're spending here about $8 million in the Super Bowl, because it's like about $4 million on the spot, and then another 4 that need to run with the network. And it's 30 seconds, right? Pretty much. And it's in a very crowded space with a lot of brands that are investing a lot of money there. So our goal or responsibility is to create a campaign that surrounds the concept that we had here and make it work for a longer period of time. Usually it's about like 2 weeks. This campaign, what we created is called, we had to come up with a concept on digital that was called Wack World. And the goal was to be the most mentioned brand in the US during the Super Bowl. And we achieved it. I mean, that was really good. You know, last year we had the same goal, and it was also achieved, and it was similar. You know, I mean, it was about a secret society concept, the creative, and we created something that was called Abo Secret, and it's like that. And with that, I mean, we integrated several type of media to achieve that, and one of those was Tabula, pretty much.
Perfect. So then that's a great segue into sort of how we're putting something as ubiquitous as a Super Bowl ad, right? Millions and millions of people seeing that and then being impacted by some creative that is thought-provoking and obviously meant to sort of stir in terms of being sticky and having a brand stick with you. That was sticky. But in terms of moving that into the native and the video space, right? Because then that's going to translate into a digital campaign. So going from mass reach of Super Bowl audiences, of being in someone's home, whether it's on screen, to in front of your smartphone, your tablet, your personal computer at work. How does that strategy change for you in terms of going from TV to digital, and then more specifically, native or video advertisement?
Yeah. Well, it's as I said, I mean, there's a lot of eyeballs, during the Super Bowl, and a lot of people is looking at the commercials, but there's a lot of noise there. So somehow we need to make sure that those videos get across on a longer period of time. So pretty much like I want to say 5 days prior to the Super Bowl, we launched a video in different versions. The one that you saw was a minute-long video, and what we do, depending on the media vehicle that we're going to use, I mean, we cut the videos for 30, 15, and 6 seconds, pretty much. We definitely, in the case of the Super Bowl, we can't switch dollars from TV to digital because there is a commitment to be able to get on the Super Bowl. But we included a significant budget for digital videos, and we measure all the results. One of the things that we did, it's mixing or buying skippables and non-skippable videos, to measure the engagement of the people, how long the people was really actually watching the videos, how worked the longer formats compared with the shorter formats, and pretty much increasing the reach that we had with the TV commercial, but on a digital environment.
And how much would you say audience is related to sort of how you're planning your strategy and what audiences you're targeting?
For the Super Bowl, it's a very open audience. You know, I mean, it's that time of the year, specifically for avocados, the target is women, you know, healthy women that like fitness and all that. But for the Super Bowl, it's open. You know, it's the time of the year where we sell more avocados, you know. It's guacamole every day and everybody eats it there. But, you know, for other campaigns that we've done, you know, I mean, and we usually what we do is we create multiple audiences by different media vehicles. You know, and we measure how they work, you know, they're with different tactics, with contextual targeting, with whitelisting on sites, all the behaviorals, and even now, you know, with the tools that are available here in the US, even with a shopper data that we know exactly the people that is actually buying a given product, and we can advertise to them, you know.
Great. So yeah, just to self-tout just a little bit in terms of all of the audience measuring that Rodrigo is mentioning, that's available through Tabula. Obviously, we have a data marketplace that's going to be able to give you the content for our user at the exact moment with the exact brand for the exact site that should be served to that user. And as such, we've taken such insights to be able to sort of deliver on those measurable results that agencies and brands like yours are actually looking for. So being whether there's a performance campaign, which has a specific CPA or CPI goal, to brand awareness. Someone, for example, that works with us like Intel is a well-known brand that is going to be able to use their blog to disseminate that information throughout our widget for existing products, or also be able to position new products that they have available to them within our content discovery experience, right? So not a lot of people know that during, you know, related to the Super Bowl, Intel powered Lady Gaga's dress. So how to resurface information that is relevant to a user, maybe some that were intrigued by that fun fact. That's the kind of internet experience and digital experience that we want to create for our users to be able to discover a new brand or rediscover an existing brand that maybe has something new to offer. In the case of aguacates, that's exactly what we're doing, right? We're using that power of content discovery, being able to surface an existing brand, serving them in a new and interesting way, and keeping up with everything in terms of strategy and digital strategy that we're able to surface.
Right.
Perfect. Sort of following along that, branding versus performance campaigns. How much would you say is the correct mix between the two? I know that there's never really a perfect mix, but what would you say is sort of the baseline for how you distribute that amongst your brands?
I mean, really, as you said, you know, there's not a formula, there's not an exact breakdown. It really depends on the business. A good example, for instance, as you mentioned, taking the avocados example, avocados is an avocado, right? It's a common bud. The 80% of the avocados that are consumed here in the US are avocados from Mexico. So all we need to do is try to grow the category, and our brand is going to grow, right? So if we make people consume more avocado and show brand and having selected the avocado from Mexico, we'll make it. But everything that we can produce or the client can produce, they sell it, you know. So it's a matter of keeping up the brand, right? For other brands that we have, like for instance Tabasco, you know, the hot sauce, it's a different situation. It's a brand that is really well known, you know. I mean, it has a really high brand awareness and brand recognition, and it's recognized as a cool brand and all that. But it's all about sales. It's all about generating that sale that happens in the supermarket. It's a long life cycle. It's like a 6-month. I mean, in average, people buy like 2 Tabascos a year. So how do you make that? How do you make them choose Tabasco at the moment when they're gonna replace the one that they had? So in that case, it's way more concentrated on conversions than on branding. So it really varies depending on the case and the situation of the brands.
Sure. In terms of branding, I would say branding in terms of positioning an existing brand or a new brand is always going to be measured in terms of page views and clicks and CTR, and always having that sort of measurable tactic. I think there is a misconception when it comes to brand awareness that just because it's brand awareness, there doesn't have to be a specific metric that we're measuring with, which is probably not the case in most cases. We always have a metric to be able to measure that against. In the case of performance campaigns, obviously the result is a little more tangible, and being able to return that CPA or ROAS, as it were, in terms of purchases in e-commerce, but there's always a way to measure it. What would you say is your experience with measuring metrics and measuring success of these campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I believe the important thing is understanding the brand situation and understanding the objective. And with that, define what are the goals that you're going to get. A good example is we had an insurance company that is our client, and for them we need to collect leads, people that actually it's interested in insurance. So the metric right there is going to be the leads, and it's going to be acquisition. On others, the metrics may be the traffic to the site or the conversions that they do online. So it also varies, depending on the objective of the campaigns. I guess the important thing really is understanding where the brand is and what you want to accomplish.
Perfect. And then also moving a little bit into what we would call video, sort of how is that division seen amongst the digital space between native advertisement, sort of more of a passive, than a video placement where you're seeing more of an engagement and more of a video-centric campaign?
I mean, definitely with a video, there's opportunity to communicate more. It's an audio-visual message, that let the brands or allow the brands to communicate better. Mm-hmm. So also the other important things is that if you look at the numbers here in the US, about 80% of the digital consumption is in videos. So definitely, I mean, videos are important. You need to include it, but you need to take into consideration how to buy it. I mean, it's not just place videos everywhere. It's how you're gonna buy it. Like in our case, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the only way to do it or the right way to do it, but what we like to do is buy only clickable videos. We don't buy videos that run by itself. They gotta be clickable, that way we avoid all the viewability issues and all the things. And also measure, as I said at the beginning, it's capable to measure what is the engagement that people have with the videos that we're putting there.
Sure. Yeah, I think there is a high correlation between obviously success of a video and duration. Engagement, we've seen in Tabula, at least within the Latin American market, it's over 3%, which is incredibly high for what is video engagement overall, right? So we measure the success of these videos according to the KPIs of the client, whether that's a viewability or a completion rate, but just having those tangible metrics in terms of what is success to you. And then if there's metrics that we have to improve upon, obviously having that conversation with the client in terms of knowing what is the benchmark and then where is the room for improvement. That can oftentimes start with the creative itself, the duration of the video, the subject matter, and also the audiences that we're targeting, right? So all of these things to consider within the ecosystem of what we're serving and making sure that we're serving these videos to the right person at the right time in terms of the audience spheres.
Correct.
In terms of the attribution and KPIs, it's another thing that we'd like to touch on, sort of the content discovery mode. In terms of last click attribution. In terms of native, that's something that we have seen a lot of noise around with last click. And we're also, in terms of Tabula, sort of changing into view-through attribution and what that means for the user's experience. That's often something that's more conversed and talked about in the space of e-commerce, but that doesn't mean that last click attribution or view-through attribution is not the case for anyone else. So just to consider that within the conversation of content marketing, what the attribution model is, and where we'd like to go from there. Perfect. Did you have anything else to add about any of the brands specifically, or?
No, I mean, just adding a little bit more about Tabula and why we have chosen you guys as a partners or as a medium that we work with. And honestly, I don't know why you guys invited me, because I know I gave you a lot of trouble on what we want to do. But really, it's a medium that we discovered that has worked for us really good in terms of the traffic that we need to drive to the site. It's a very effective traffic driver. We've been, and you know that, we've been trying to optimize everything that we do with you guys in terms of day parts, in terms of audiences, checking with different audiences. And I think that we're into a point that we feel really comfortable with your medium driving people to our site. And that's the main, that I would say that's the main KPI that we've been using with you guys. on top of the conversions that we also have requested from you guys in the past.
Sure.
So that's about it.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the digital space, and obviously it's content discovery in terms of the subject matter at hand, but Taboola really has redefined what it is to be content. Content can be an article, which is the traditional content sense, right? It's an article that you land on that's 6 paragraphs and you read it top to bottom. If you're a very engaged user, content can also be a landing page for a particular action. It can be a video that you want to see. It can be a gallery of photos. So every brand, whether it's a brand directly, for example, Tabasco or Avocados from Mexico, or every agency has a story to tell in terms of those landing pages and that content, right? What that content is can obviously vary in a million different forms, but driving users to that action, to that page, to that video, to that gallery is always sort of going to be our KPI with the user intention of discovery, of discovering that process, of discovering that new product, of discovering a new app, of discovering whatever it is that can exist out there for the user. So how to get to that trajectory and sort of steering the digital experience of that user is always going to be the main component. And obviously, the two sides of that coin are branding and awareness, and obviously performance, and sort of all of the different sort of formats that we've measured and we've mentioned here today, such as native and video, are those two that are going to complement that experience. Obviously, one can lend to the other in terms of what is going to be driving that final conversion or that interaction. But in terms of having that user experience be complemented for their journey in terms of what they're doing, represented for the brand as well as the user.
Right.
Perfect. And in terms of your experience with Taboola, have you heard of reception in terms of how it's also affected other avenues in terms of, let's say, non-digital or complementing an experience somehow?
Well, I think that's a really good point. You know, I mean, I think that Taboola becomes one touch point of an overall campaign. I mean, it's rarely we do a campaign that only has one media vehicle or a media channel. So I think it complements really well when you do social media campaigns and you need to add that traffic element, and you need to have more volume going to your site, and you need to, for instance, compare the conversions that you get from social, that you get from banners, or that you get from native advertising content. So I think that the part that is kind of the art here is finding the right balance on how you interact the different channels that you're using for the final common objective. But I want to say that in a lot of our campaigns, it's a really good component. You know.
Perfect. And in terms of if you were to have a digital crystal ball in terms of where we're going with either content discovery or digital, or sort of a mix of both in the next 3 to 5 years, what would you say is the next big thing, or where should advertisers and marketers sort of concentrate their efforts?
Yeah, that wasn't in the script.
We're going off the cuff.
Yeah, we're gonna. Well, I mean, there are a lot of things, going on. I mean, there are like a virtual reality is a big thing that potentially is going to work or not. But what happened in the digital world and what we've seen is that it comes big discoveries, right? Like, for instance, programmatic platforms, boom, and it comes and it grow, and everybody's about programmatic, and then the kind of evolving. Nothing against programmatic, but programmatic kind of stops a little bit, and some other technologies come, So it's really hard to tell where we're going to be. What we know, for a fact is that the video, it's a format that is growing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that is growing a lot here in the US, I mean, there are about 70 million households already with audio devices, the Alexas, and also, so that's also something that is going to grow, and definitely something that is going to have a lot of presence on the media. You're going to be able to buy your groceries and your things just saying to Alexa what you want to buy, right? So things like that. So that's happening a lot. The other thing that is growing a lot here, it's all the grocery e-commerce. It's growing really fast, between Amazon and Walmart and Kroger and all that. They're creating their own digital platforms, for grocery e-commerce. So that's another thing that I think is growing.
Perfect. Hopefully that's given you guys something in terms of a seed to plant in terms of digital strategy and things. And we did want to open it up to any questions that you guys had. If anybody has any questions regarding anything that was discussed or maybe something different in terms of the vein of content discovery, native, digital, anything?
Oh. Come on, ask something.
Did they answer all the questions you possibly could have?
All right.
So I have a question for you,
Sure.
if I may. Because you've got all this data and all these different clients, are you beginning to see patterns of success and patterns of failure, if you like? So what are ingredients for success from all the work that Taboola has done across all these different clients and businesses?
Sure. In terms of failures and successes, I think that there's tendencies and trends that we can note from a vertical perspective. So in working with us, what we really want to become is a solution for advertisers in general. There's things and there's insights that we can provide based on a seasonality perspective, just looking at things holistically from all the data that we span. So we are able to provide some insights in terms of verticals. But obviously, metrics and sort of what the information that our algorithm and our platform are providing are the biggest and the most tangible that we can sort of take and then explore together as partners and then decide what we're going to do with next. I think that becomes the most important. Hopefully that's been the case with you guys, working together in terms of strategizing what we're seeing from the platform perspective. I think an interesting part of dealing with and working with advertisers is audiences sometimes come prepackaged with some brands. They think they know who the ideal audience is. And what we're hoping to provide from a provider perspective is this is your audience, of course, but have you also explored this audience who can be tangentially different from what they came with in their brief? And that's what Taboola really exists for, is providing a different platform to discover not only new audiences, but new user segments in terms of who can actually be engaged with this product, not from just the perspective of a click, but in terms of being engaged with your product, purchasing the product, having some kind of ROAS on that product, and then sort of building from there.
Anybody else has a question about content distribution, delivery, results, measurement? Because I can keep going. I have a question for you, Rodrigo. So the T word, right, which is a double T, trust and transparency. What are you doing, or what are you hearing from your clients that you should be doing, or what are you offering in that space to make this a trustworthy and transparent kind of space to be in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. There's a lot of fraud on the industry, as we know. I mean, there's a lot of robots and things clicking here, there, impressions that don't really get to your target. So what we do, I mean, we work with different providers, to check, if our impressions are really working, if are really going to the audience that we're looking for. And most important, I mean, it's the way that we buy it. I mean, we buy results. I mean, I don't remember the last campaign that we bought based on impressions. I think that was like 4 years ago or something like that. So now it's everything about results, about really achieving the goals, and what works for that, it's are the mediums that we keep in our plans, and the ones that don't work, I mean, just they go out. One of the things that we see is, as we were talking about different type of platforms, like, I mean, we see a lot of vendors presenting the same thing, packaging in a different way, and offering things that we know that are not achievable. So that you see in the industry. We try to be as much as transparent as we can be with our clients, and I think results have been helping us to keep them and to gain more clients, very much.
Cool. Anybody else? Then we've got 4 minutes to spare, which is amazing. Thank you very much, Jennifer and Rodrigo. And if you have any other questions, they're milling around, and we're going to set up for the next session. So thank you very much.